Let's talk about vehicles. I have this question probably most of all is, what vehicle do I need? Can I take my vehicle that I have on one of the trips? And the answer is normally yes. Most people don't realize that their vehicles are suitable for safaring in Africa. If we talk safaring in Africa, Africa is not as dark as it used to be. The good old dark Africa doesn't exist anymore. Africa has been developed to a large extent. So we see tar roads and good gravel roads quite often, even good tar roads quite often. So it's not like in the old days where once you cross the border into Africa from Southern Africa or South Africa that you suddenly now go into the Gramadulas. Those days are gone. So most vehicles can do a safari trip. What you often get caught out with is that, let's say you go into the Moreni in Botswana, they require a four-wheel drive for you to go in there. So the park requires it. It's not my requirement, it's the National Park's requirement. And the reason for that is because it is very sandy and you can get stuck. There's no official vehicles going around that much, and you can get into really serious trouble if you don't have a four-wheel drive that you can get yourself out with. So four-wheel drives would be required in those cases. If you go down the crater wall in Tanzania, in Ngorongoro Crater, it's a very steep descent. You need low range just to slow you down because it's so steep. And then you need a low range vehicle, something with four-wheel drive. The park also requires that if you want to visit the crater. So there's a few things that you can do in Africa that requires you to have a four-wheel drive. And it's not the fact that you're going to go into four-wheel drive once you cross the border and now you're going to drive in four-wheel drive for a month. It doesn't work like that. It's only occasionally that we need a four-wheel drive. But that being said, a four-wheel drive generally would mean that the vehicle also has good ground clearance. If you have a four-wheel drive vehicle with the low-range lever or the low-range button or knob or whatever, then it normally means that your vehicle is built for four-wheel drive conditions. So the ground clearance is a little bit more. If you look at things like the Subaru Forester, typical SUVs in that range, the all-wheel drives, then the ground clearances are quite low. And that could catch you out in many of the times. So first of all, when I talk about four-wheel drives, a four-wheel drive and an all-wheel drive is two different things. An all-wheel drive is a vehicle that produces power by the engine through a gearbox and then through a management system transfers the power to the four different wheels. Generally all four wheels get power, but the engine management system will determine where that power goes. And you can have a 60-40 split, you can have a 90-10 split. What that means is the Honda CR-V, for example, it's a front-wheel drive vehicle that sends 10% of the power to the back. I'm talking about the older CR-Vs, I'm not sure what the new spec is. But only 10% of the power is transferred to the back wheels. Now if I'm going through an area and I need my back wheels at that moment to propel me, there's only 10% power, so it's not a 4x4, it's a 90-10 split all-wheel drive. Fortunate, as far as I know, is a 60-40 split, so it's not a 50-50, it's 60-40 when they are in all-wheel drive mode. The moment you lock your center diff, you are guaranteed 50% power to the front and 50% power to the back, and that's why it's called a four-wheel drive. So all-wheel drive has power on all wheels, but it's managed normally either by an engine management system or by differentials or something like that. There's no guarantees where the power is. And that's why an all-wheel drive is not the best vehicle for off-road conditions. One, the ground clearance might be dodgy, and two, the engine management system will manage the system. And if you're driving in four-wheel drive, you want to know that you've got power everywhere. And that is basically the idea. If you take an all-wheel drive into extremely slippery conditions, maybe thick sand or mud or something, they always battle because the computer eventually gets so confused that it doesn't know what to do anymore. because wheels are slipping and its engine's being cut and there's all kinds of weird things that's happening. So a four-wheel drive, generally like this old tank, you put it in 4 and you know you've got traction on all 4 wheels, 50-50 split, end of story, no discussion. So an all-wheel drive is not quite suited, but it can do some of the trips. If I go into Lesotho and I do predominantly tar roads, then all-wheel drive is great. We might just have a little bit of ice and snow, so not a big issue. If you have high middle manikis, then all-wheel drives will not be suitable. So generally speaking, it is the best choice to make is to have a four-wheel drive, which has got that little lever that says 4H and 4L for your low-range gearbox. If it doesn't have the lever or the knob or the button or something, it doesn't have a low-range gearbox, it could still be a very capable 4x4. For example, the Touareg has only one gearbox, but it is set up in such a way that it replaces the low-range gears in the single gearbox. So that one is suitable. It's a four-wheel drive, but it doesn't have the low range specifically. So normally what four-wheel drive would refer to would be the 50-50 split. I can lock my diff and I'm good. In the super modern large 4x4s, like the Land Cruisers and the Touaregs and those ones, the engine management systems, the Discovery 4s, the engine management system is so good and so big that it is a 4x4. And it has been tested and it works. So in that case, no issues, no problems there. But when you talk about the X-Trail and Tiguan and the Subarus and the Volvos, the more smaller SUV, station wagon type vehicles with four-wheel drive, you're going to have a problem with ground clearance, and you might just have a problem with traction as well. Remember, if we deflate our tires to get better traction, the ground clearance goes down. So if you had 158 millimeters or 160 millimeters and you deflate your tires, that drops down. And it becomes a problem with the middle maniki. If you have trucks driving on a stretch of sand road, then your middle maniki will be very high. And it doesn't matter what vehicle you drive, you're going to battle. So your lower vehicles then is just not going to make it. So yeah, four-wheel drives generally the best way to go. But that being said, the four-wheel drive that you have is normally good enough to do it. The one with the low-range lever, doesn't matter which brand it is, it doesn't have to be a Land Cruiser, Bucky or a Hilux, or it can be any vehicle with a low-range lever or the knob or the button, and it should be able to do my trip. If you're not sure, you can just phone me and or email me and just say to me, this is the vehicle I have, can I do trips, which trips can I do, I'm interested in X, Y and Z. The way I design my trips is specifically to get people with their own equipment to come with me. I don't want you to spend money on a new vehicle just to do a trip with me. It's wasteful and it's unnecessary. If I cannot design a trip where I can accommodate people, then I'm not worth being a tour operator that I am. I have to be able to take people with me with a basic 4x4. I've had old Hiluxes, 80s models. I've had the more modern Touaregs and the Discovery 4s. So I've had all kinds of vehicles with me, and everybody enjoys it just as much. So bring what you've got. Don't go and buy something that you don't have and you think you might need. Just something on equipment. You see the vehicles with I call them Christmas trees. They've got those orange sand tracks on the side, and they've got the high lift jacks and the jerry cans, and it's just all the stuff on the vehicle. You don't really need all of that stuff. If you have it, it's great. If you enjoy it, it's great. No problem with that. But you don't have to have that to start with. The vehicle that I had that was the least equipped for any of my trips has been a Suzuki Jimny and a cooler box with 2 people in it. No fridge, no battery system, no big vehicle, just a ground tent, a cooler box and a Suzuki Jimny for a 7-day trip into Botswana. No problems. No issues at all. Nothing can break because there's nothing to break. So please don't spend your money on stuff. You don't need stuff. You have a tent. If you don't, I've got tents, mattresses, stretchers. I've even got extra fridges. So if there's something you need and you needed to do a trip with me, then let me know. I can always help you out with something. But you don't need all the kit in the vehicle. If we do recoveries, then I will have all the recovery equipment, so I carry that. I will teach you how to deflate your tires and when to deflate your tires and to what degree to deflate your tires, not to get stuck. And if you don't get stuck, you don't need all this stuff. So please don't spend money on it. It's really unnecessary and it makes the vehicle heavier and it's more things that can go wrong. So keep it simple, keep it straightforward, work with the basics. I will teach you how to get along just with a basic 4x4 and a match to deflate your tires with. I'll explain to you how deflations work. All of those things will be on the trip itself. So I try to transfer my knowledge on the trip, on vehicles and their setting up and what you need to do. So that's about it on a vehicle. Important points once again, you should be able to do a trip with me with what you've got. You don't need canopies and all kinds of other things. You can just come with what you've got. So don't go and buy a new vehicle if you already have a vehicle with a low range gearbox. Don't buy fancy equipment. It doesn't help you. It's expensive, it's heavy, and it takes up space. So that's unnecessary. Be careful of all-wheel drives. All-wheel drives generally do not do 4x4 trips. Their computers don't like it. Just stick to a basic 4x4 and you should be alright. As far as the wheels go on in the vehicle, you don't need mud terrain and all this big knobbly tirey things. You can just get away with normal all-terrain tires, which is what I use. I do all-terrain tires on all my trips. Or if you have highway terrain tires, I've had vehicles through the Serengeti on normal tires that the buckies are released with. Highway terrain tires, no problems. So you don't need the big fancy super duper deluxe tires. You can get away with something standard. And that's it. The key to it all is that it's simple, straightforward. It's my job to get you through there. It's not your job to fit in with how I drive. It's what I do. So try me out and let's see if I can get you and your vehicle through. But yeah, that's the lesson on vehicles.